Okay, hello, welcome back to my podcast. So, I actually have my first guest this week, which I'm so excited about. And the reason I chose Kate to be my first guest is because last year I was on her podcast and she was actually, you were the first person podcast that I was ever on. So, that's why I just was like, you know what? I've done a year consistently of my own podcast and it's so fitting to have you as my first guest. So, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I feel so privileged that I get to be the first guest.
I love that. No, it's an honor to have you. Honestly, I love your podcast, and I know a lot of my clients listen to you as well because they often refer to the podcast that we did together as well. So yeah, I think it'll
Yeah.
be really useful. Obviously, I could introduce you, but probably be a little bit better for you to introduce yourself if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. I always, it's funny, I still to this day get stuck on be like, who am I and what do I do? My name is Kate Hamilton. I am an online health, fitness, and nutrition coach. And my business is Nourish Her Coaching, which is to help women become the healthiest and the happiest versions of themselves. So what I found over the years is no matter what a woman's goal is, whether they are looking to lose body fat to get into a healthy weight range, whether they're looking to get stronger, fitter, no matter what their goals are, it's the same fundamentals that we need to put in place. It's the same lifestyle, and that's what Nourisher is built on. And that's what my life's work is. It's just to empower women to feel their best, and like for me, health and fitness just grew into something so much more than health and fitness. And really, as I started to, you know, like be able to lift heavier weights and, do things I didn't think I could do, it really opened up this, well, what else can I do? It really was the most empowering thing I've ever done. So that's kind of what I do now and try and help others achieve.
I love that. Thank you. And actually, obviously, I said I wanted you to be my first guest because you were the first. I'm trying to rephrase that, but I can't get it. I was the first time a guest on someone's podcast on your podcast.
My
I
podcast was the first time you were a guest. Yeah.
yeah, I was
Yeah.
trying to
Yeah.
get it
And
out,
we
but
had
I
such
can't.
a great conversation.
Yeah.
It was so good.
And that's also why, because we are very similar. We have a very similar ethos, and that's really important to me because obviously 2026, there's a lot going on in the health and fitness space. There's a lot of noise, there's a lot of misinformation, there's a lot of like, quick fixes and the like. And I really care about what you just said there about health, fitness, and what it can bring into your life. And we were both teachers and we pivoted into this. And like, that's why for me, it's so important to, I want to kind of touch on that specifically as well, because health and fitness didn't just make us look and feel better and more confident. It brought this whole new thing into our lives. Like we both now are business owners with this. And that's something that I'm always trying to get across on my Instagram. And I find it kind of hard because I don't want to come across as boasty. But if you had told me 5 years ago that you're going to lose 25 kg, you're then going to run your own business to help people to do so as well. And other than that, like fitness has brought so much else into my life that I regularly touch on in this podcast. But I help run the GA team here in Taiwan and I'm like the captain of it. And like it's just like the most incredible thing in my life. And all of those different things, everything you just mentioned there is it's not just about looking better and feeling better. It's what it also brings into your life. And you regularly refer to how it means that you have a bit more freedom to spend time with kids and stuff, your kids and stuff like that. And I think that that is absolutely huge. And that was one of my notes that I wanted to touch on. Like I naturally don't have kids, but I work with a lot of women who do. And it is hard to understand something naturally that you haven't been through yet. And I think I'm quite good at helping women work fitness around their busy lifestyles. But you obviously not only have three kids, right?
Yeah.
You have the three kids, you're flat
Great.
out,
Yeah.
you're so fit yourself, but you're also running the business. Like, how do you manage all of that? And have you any like tips there on one, I suppose, encouraging people to get started because of what it can bring into your life, but also how to manage it all? Because you're clearly managing a lot, but you do it really well.
It's funny, like, because I think from the outside, everyone always looks like they have it together, don't they? Like they look like they're doing it all. And like it's funny, I'm actually in the process, I'm building for this will be like the first news on this. I'm actually building a business mentorship for women around this whole concept of being able to to have it all basically. And what as I'm kind of, I'm planning out a course on this, and what I've been talking about is we can have it all, but we can't do it all. We can't do it all at the same time. And the first thing I'll say is my kids are 16, 13, and 8. So when I started building my business was 6 years ago. So they were they were young enough. They were 10, what minus 30 or 10, what was that? 10, 9, 8, 7, 10, 7, and 2. But it was lockdown when I started, first of all. So I didn't have anything else to do really. Um, and by the time I started building my business, I had two kids in school and I had another kid in play school. So that really helped. And I think any women listening who are mothers of babies and of toddlers, you have to go easy on yourself. I see it with my sister at the minute. She's at that stage. She's got a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. And when I'm minding them, I'm like, there's no way I would have been able to build this business without crashing and burning when my kids were that small. Now, there are women who do it, but it's when I was at the early stages of building the business and kind of transitioning from, I was teaching and I was doing it at the same time. And then I kind of took a career break and I was working in a gym and I was training people in person and I was teaching classes and I was growing the online business. I had a lot of mum guilt because the time has to come from somewhere. And in those initial couple of years, it did come from time with the kids. And
Mm.
I'm very lucky that I have a very supportive husband who I was like, look, I'm building this. He's like, go build it. I will do, like, I will pick up the slack here at home. And he did. And I like it took me a long time. I nearly feel like all of it, especially my oldest, he's 16 now. And when I started this, he was only 10. And although we still had our quality time together, our holidays, and we did our days out and all of that, but I wasn't as present for
Mm.
a good couple of years as I was when they were smaller and I was a teacher growing up. And I did carry a lot of guilt for that. Whereas now I see, I have two teenagers and they see me as someone who works hard, who's built a business, who has the freedom, and they see what hard work actually not even just hard work, like focused work and dedication can actually lead to. And I'm proud that I did it now because I think I've done them more by showing them rather than like constantly fussing over them, if that makes sense. And yeah, like sorry, that was a really long-winded way of me being like, there isn't any perfect at all. I've now kind of got my business to a stage where I have more freedom and I have staff and it's not all consuming anymore. And I'm very intentional with the time I spend with my kids now. But even at that, half the time they don't even want to spend time with me anymore.
Yeah, I can
But I
imagine.
think it's just we can't do it all at the same time, is my point. But as women, we tend to like the society expects us to work as if we don't have kids, to raise kids as if we don't have to work, and to look absolutely perfect in the meantime as well, and look after our own health. Like it's exhausting. And as I built the business as well, my own health suffered a little bit, not nothing drastic, but like I let my training slip a little bit, my walks, wasn't getting enough sleep, took a while to kind of recover from that. And you learn as you go, and there is no perfect. And it's about being like what's important now and what do I need to focus on now. And if I was to go back and change anything in what I did in those early days of career change and building a business in the early days, would be I would have kept that time to look after my own health. I would have been more strict with my sleep. I would have ensured I got that walk in rather than working that extra bit. But I think the mum guilt of not being focused on the kids was like, I can't take more time for me. And that's how I felt at the time.
Hmm. And I suppose it is an extreme, not example, but circumstance having like building a business with three kids, a career change, and trying to also, because naturally your business is in health and fitness, you have to practice what you preach as well. And it is an extreme example, if you know what I mean. But the thing that you've come away with is how important it is to fill your own cup. And I think that that's something that I'm often trying to get across. When obviously a huge reason people put off starting a process like this or getting a coach is because they're like, I don't have the time. And sometimes it's not even the time, it's the headspace. And I feel like that doesn't get enough credit as well. And I'm regularly saying that to clients as well of I there's a fine line between support and pressure. And just because you might have the time to do something doesn't mean you have the headspace. And just because you have the headspace doesn't mean you might not have the time. And sometimes it's a bit of both. But in looking after yourself and in going for a 15-minute walk first thing in the morning, I know that might create it's 15 minutes less time that you have, but it might give you more headspace for other things. And did you find, like, now that you have come out of that situation feeling I should have put a bit more time into looking after myself in that way, let's say, like, now, how important do you feel it is to fill your own cup in order to be, like, let's say, get into the gym, and just to pivot even onto the importance of strength training and just looking after yourself in general? How have you, like, obviously managing it all? Sometimes the first thing to go is sleep, or it is the gym and stuff like that when times are busy. But how important do you find it is to fill your own cup, considering all the other things you have to look after as well?
It is the most important thing, and it's funny because I see it a lot with a lot of women that we work with as well, and it's it's something that a lot of women really, really struggle with. I never struggled with it as much because, like, my mum always kind of raised us to, like, to be independent, to I kind of actually, and I am a bit more so than my sister. I do tend to put that time for me aside, but I see a lot of women that struggle with it, and I just want everyone to know that it's not our fault. We're not weak. Like, it's generational, a lot of it. It's and especially if our mothers or our sisters or our aunts or our friends are telling us that we're being selfish because we're going to the gym, or, where did you leave your kids when you went off to do this, or, like, there's a lot of societal pressures there as well. But
Sorry,
what I wanted to think about.
can I just pause you for a second? Can you hear that?
Yes.
The music.
Yeah.
No, it's just, I'm actually going to keep this in because I don't like to over edit my podcast. But in Taiwan, the music truck comes around when you have to try out your rubbish, like bring out your bins, like,
Oh, I'd be
so
like, it's
it's
ice cream time.
Beethoven. I know every foreigner thinks that, but it's like Beethoven, and I forgot that it's a 7:15 every day, and everyone literally runs out and brings out their bins to the Beethoven truck. So I could just hear Beethoven coming there, and I was like, oh my god, bad timing. But
No,
yes,
it
okay.
was only really light in the background there. It was only
Yeah, no,
really light.
I was just worried that you'd be able to hear it and it would ruin what you were saying. But yeah, you've always been quite good at putting aside that, like, intentional time.
But what I was going to say there about that intentional time, don't be afraid to push against that feeling of, oh, I'm being, like, it's okay to feel, oh, I feel like I'm being selfish, or, feel what you feel, like, listen to it, but then question it, because just because you think something doesn't mean it's true, first of all. And that was a huge life revelation to me, being like, oh, like, and I read this in a book, in a fantastic book. I actually talk about it all the time. It's called Somebody Should Have Told Us by Jack Pransky. It's amazing. But I was like, just blew my mind. I was like, just because I think something doesn't mean it's true. And when you think about how often we go about our lives and we just take what we think as if it's fact, the positive, the negative, the whole lot, and it's like, oh. But then also the point in relation to your self care. People talk about how they would die for their kids, right? And I'm sure a lot of you will have seen this online. But then why won't you live for your kids? Why
Hmm.
won't you get strong? Why won't you get fit? Why won't you get a good night's sleep? Why won't you cut back on drinking so much? Why won't you put healthier food into your body? Do that for your kids. They don't need you to die for them. They need you to live for them. And I think that resonates really strongly with me. It's like, I need to put, and it's not about being perfect. Like, and life is hard and it's stressful, but it's like I have to put a certain amount into me so that I can be there for them, not without sounding like a cliche, fill your own cup so you can give it, you
Hmm.
can pour to others, but it's true. And it needs to be done. And also that point, that I bring back to it in relation to building the business, but it's the same for health and fitness. Your kids are watching, so show them what's normal. What's normal? It's normal. Like, my kids from a very young age, it was normal to see their mother on the kitchen floor doing push-ups, or, when I first started working out. And then it became normal to go to the gym. My 16-year-old now goes to the gym regularly with his friends, not because I make him do it, but because it's just like he sees it as a normal thing that people do. And my 13-year-old daughter is already asking about joining the gym. I'm like, you're a bit young yet. They won't let you in. But that it's done from a place of strength and health and not punishment.
Yeah. I love to hear that. I have a couple of clients. I one in particular, like her daughter will have a mini Greek yogurt bowl with her. And like when she's heading out, her daughter wants to know how many kilometers that they've walked and stuff. And I know like there can be a fine line there, and different parents will have different ideas of what they do or don't want their kids to do. But like as you just said there, like you doing push-ups on the floor and now your 13-year-old wants to head to the gym. Like there is nothing negative there. That is so, so, so positive. So I suppose I never thought of that extra layer of like not only are you filling your cup for them, but you're also influencing them. Like you're showing them ultimately what a healthy and fit life looks like. That's amazing. And that's such a nice story to
Yeah.
hear.
And it can be like, because as mothers, it can, and even just as women, and you might be able to relate to this, you know, a lot of us have grown up listening to our mothers or our older sisters or our aunts or whoever be talking about how they feel fat and how many calories are in this, and you know, oh, how long is it going to take me to burn off this? And there's all that diet culture that our previous generations have put on us. And I remember my mum always being really body conscious and, you know, worrying about being overweight. And, you know, it's, and from a very young age, then it being something that we focused on. And that's not my mother's fault. It's society, and it's, you know, it's no one's fault. It's just the way it was. But now, like when, like I talk about calories a lot, I talk about nutrition, I talk about exercise a lot. My kids hear me talking to clients. They hear me um posting videos. They see my videos. And what like, especially with my daughter in particular, I have two boys and a girl, and my daughter is 13, and I talk to her a lot about that food is fuel,
Mm.
and you know that it's really important that we eat enough for energy, and the calories is a form of energy in the body, and that we need to be putting enough calories into our body to be strong. Like she plays football and she's real slight, like she's real petite, and she wants to get bigger and stronger because she gets knocked on the football pitch. And I'm like, yeah, it's just about eating the good balanced dinners and getting as much of those calories into you as you can. And yeah, like, and I'm just talking to her about, you know, food quality, and you know, and I think as well with kids, not putting a huge emphasis on demonizing foods as well. You know, kids, especially teenagers, they're gonna eat shit as well. Let them,
Mm.
as long as they're having their breakfast, their lunch, and their dinners. You know, what did we do when we were kids? You know, like it's I think it's important to have a relaxed approach, but for them to see the vegetables and the protein and the meals cooked from home and the regular exercising and the drinking water seen as a normal thing, and the other bits to be the frills on the outside when the special occasions, or the, you know, after the meals or whatever.
Hmm. And I always notice that on an initial call with a client or just in general, people assume or ladies tend to blame themselves for their relationship with food and their relationship with exercise. But it does come from how we were brought up. And I'm so, so, so like dead set on that because I've experienced it. And my poor mom, like her ears are probably burning. But again, like you said, it wasn't her fault. And it wasn't my granny's fault either. Like it is society and it is a lack of education and it is that demonizing foods. And I feel in some ways it's improving a lot, but then sometimes I hop on Instagram and I'll see something and I'm like, okay, maybe we've stopped calling foods good and bad, but now there's so many other extreme measures that are going on. But it isn't necessarily our fault. And as women, as you've just said, like they do tend to blame themselves or be tough on themselves. And one thing that I wouldn't say struggled with as a coach, but you know, when you first start coaching, obviously you're not as confident in your approach. And a couple of clients would have said like I need more tough love, and I was always very dead set because I was like this as a teacher, and I suppose you might have noticed like sometimes your tendency is as a teacher do overlap into coaching a little bit as well. I'm not saying I
Mm.
talk to my clients like school children, but like it is kind of a similar, like I was a soft teacher and I'll
Transferable skill. It's a
yeah,
transferable skill.
let's just say that. But I always had compassion for students. Like I couldn't get
Yeah.
angry at them because I could see the stress that they were under. And that's what I'm like with clients as well. I'm like, you are beating yourself up as is already. You don't need me to add to that. You don't need me to be in this echo chamber of like, yeah, you should have got up and went to the gym this morning even though you're wrecked. Like I'm not going to sit here and do that because one, I'm not in your shoes. But two, that's not going to be productive. There's a fine line there between that tough love and what is actually productive. And again, it's not our fault. Our relationship with food and exercise is not our fault. It comes from how we were brought up. There are certain things that are now in our control and it is our responsibility, but it's not our fault, you know? And it's just interesting to hear you say that, of like how you're noticing that your kids are influenced by your relationship with food and exercise now, because it has to end with us. Like, it has to end here, and we can't carry in the same verbiage and terminologies around food that we have inherited from our mother and grandparents and everything like that, because again, it's not their fault, but it's society's fault. But in terms of that tough love aspect of things, like how do you handle that when it comes to yourself and also clients? Of Because I think this will be useful for people to hear, and I don't want this podcast to be too like coaching and client heavy, because I know not everyone listening to this will be one of my clients or yours or wants to be a client. Like, not everyone needs a coach as such, they just get a lot from podcasts. But that kind of blaming yourself and negativity in a world where, so if you're a mother to kids, you've also got older parents to think of, you've got a job, you've got exercise, all these things. The answer is never beating yourself up, but we do tend to beat ourselves up. And how do you handle that with yourself and with clients?
I think that that guilt and that pressure that women put on themselves is so common, and it's the one thing that holds them back from actually making progress. It's because, it's that all or nothing, that what's the point kind of mindset that comes in. Um, and that's what leads to that cycle of, restrict, restrict, binge, guilt, take ages to get back on the wagon, the on the wagon, off the wagon um, narrative. And it's, I also don't believe necessarily in the tough love approach either, because I also don't think that you can make anyone change if they don't want to do it themselves. And it has to come from deep within. So, in the years of me coaching, one thing that I've learned is that it's anyone who's struggling at all, you have got to dig deep. The mindset work, the journaling, that, like, we do a lot of mindset work with clients, because you have to you have to know why you're doing it. First of all, why are you putting this in place? You have to be able to feel that why. It has to feel deep within, not what you think that your coach wants you to feel. What do you actually feel? Why are you actually here? What's important to you? What are your values? Like, how many people listening, if I just said to you now, if you were on the spot and you had to answer me, what are your values? Probably off the top of your head, you might know. Like, a lot of people probably haven't, and not because we don't care, just because we're fucking busy and we haven't had time to think about it. But what are your values? And when you are experiencing patterns of emotional eating, or inconsistency, what's actually going through your mind when that's happening? What are you feeling? And it's not in the moment, because in the moment it's very difficult. You're emotionally drunk. It's very difficult to work through it in the moment. But afterwards, that evening or the following morning, you need to reflect back. You need to put pen to paper, and you need to be like, what happened? Whether it was like that you ate everything in the cupboards the night before. But yeah, okay, you know what happened in the moment, but what happened in leading up to that? What were you feeling? What did you need in that moment? Did you get that from the eating? And like, so that, and again, that takes a lot of repetition as well. But women get so frustrated with themselves and they get so mad at themselves. And a lot of it stems right back to our coping mechanisms for stress. There's very few of us who are, I would argue there's nobody listening to your podcast, Rebecca, that's lazy.
Mm-hmm.
We're busy, we're stressed, we're trying to do more, and your health and fitness can't become another thing on your to-do list. It has to be the thing that you're doing for you to feel free. And then it's not something that needs to be, and it's so simple as well. Like, it doesn't need to be something that's, oh, another fucking thing that I have to do in my week. Where am I supposed to fit that in? Like, it becomes another chore. Instead, it becomes something that you get to do for you, and you don't have to overthink it, because you know that it makes you feel better. Like, one of the best things that I ever experience is, when a woman starts in our coaching, and scheduling in a daily walk is a bit of a chore initially, and then a few weeks in, something happens and they're not able to get their walk in for a few days, because life happens, and they're raging because they missed their walk. They're like, fucking raging, I couldn't get my walk in. I was like, oh, the start, you were raging that you had to do a daily walk. And that's when that switch, when that happens with women, where it's like, I get to do this, and I'm doing it for me, and I'm not doing it because Rebecca or Kate told me I have to. I'm doing it because I know why I'm doing it and why it's important to me. And your why would be very different to my why. And my why now was very different to what it was 5 years ago, let's say. So I've completely lost my train of thought of what your actual question was, but the tough love. So
Hmm.
I don't think that tough love has a place. I think that curiosity is what's needed. It's like, it is what it is. Something happens. It's only good or bad if we put a label of good or bad on it and be like, okay, right, you ate a lot of calories yesterday, a little bit less nutrient dense foods. Okay, let's get curious instead of being judgmental about it. Let's be curious about it and try and get to the bottom of it so that you can understand it better, so that the next time that arises, you feel a little bit more empowered. It still might not be perfect. And sure, we all still have times where we're like, F it, right, we're taking we're taking a night off. It happens. And I think that perfectionism needs to be dropped. You don't join a coach or a program and suddenly everything's perfect. And the older we get, the less perfect things get, because the more responsibilities we have. And anyone listening who has babies, it doesn't get any easier when they're teenagers. It gets easier for a while when they're kind of middle, primary school age. Then they become teenagers and you have to wait up for them, or you have to drive them here and there. And then, women into their 40s and 50s have elderly parents. And there's a huge percentage, I don't have it in front of me, of women who have caregiving roles, whether it is children or nieces and nephews or parents or elderly relatives to look after. So as we get older, the responsibilities get more and the stresses get more. And beating ourselves up because we can't be perfect, because there's so much that we're doing, is not helpful.
Hmm. Yeah. And as you said there, that reflection piece on understanding, again, that it's not a reflection of your relationship with food and exercise. If someone has had an extremely stressful day and they come home and I don't know, the chicken that they took out of the fridge 2 days ago or something is gone off, like I'm just throwing something random out there, that tips them over the edge and they end up just getting a takeaway. I know immediately that will become like they're going to blame themselves, but there's so many deeper logistics there, and if they don't take that time at the end of that day or the next day to reflect on, okay, well, why did I end up getting a takeaway on a random Wednesday? Well, it's actually because of this, and then it's because of this. And it's never actually just, oh yeah, like it's Wednesday and I just feel like getting a takeaway, so I'm getting it. As you said, no one here is lazy. They're busy and they're stressed. And there's so many reasons as to why things don't go to plan and why things aren't perfect. And the reflection piece I do find is probably the hardest thing to get people to do. And I'll be honest, I didn't really do it so much throughout my journey, and I could be better at it now in terms of like business and the like. But obviously, I wouldn't tend to have the relationship with food. I don't need to reflect on it so much now because generally my habits are quite mindless at this stage. And what you mentioned there about getting out for that 30-minute walk and such with the clients who like are raging when they don't get that, whereas before they were raging that they had to do it, that's that piece of like, you have to so mindfully do that habit at first to get to a place where it's mindless. So there will always be that element of friction introducing a new habit, but after a couple of weeks it becomes so mindless. And that's I suppose our role is to find that low hanging fruit, and which is the next little baby step that we can focus on. And when a client gets to a stage where that is happening effortlessly, maybe effortless is a strong word, but it's happening 90% of the time pretty effortlessly, then what is the next little push that we can do? But it's the deep mindset work that we really need to encourage them to do. But I do find it's the hardest thing to get clients to do, because it's like another list, or the thought of taking out a pen and paper with a journal when there's so many other things. So how do you encourage clients to prioritize that, but also how do you prioritize it yourself when there's obviously so many other things on your to-do list?
We do it live on our weekly Zoom call every week, so they can't
Hmm.
escape me. Because then it becomes their weekly journaling time, and then and then at the end of the journaling session, I'll leave a couple of questions, and I'll share the questions in the WhatsApp group then, and I'm like, this is what you're focusing on for the week. And but if someone is listening and they're like, I really do need to start reflecting, um, I think the best time to do it for most people is when you get into bed. Just have your little journal beside your bed. Like, this need only take 2 minutes.
Hmm.
Just write down one thing that you're proud of about yourself today. Just one little win. That's all. because it's amazing as we continue on this journey. We're always striving, like, what's next? What's next? Oh, I still have so much weight to lose. I still so much to go until I'm able to do this or whatever. That we tend to forget how far we've come. And this concept is called The Gap and the Gain. It's another great book, actually. And it's about, like, when we're kind of striving for goals, that if you are always looking towards where you have to go, you're living in the gap. Whereas if you regularly take a little look back on how far you've come, you're living in the gain. And that we should do that regularly, even by just one win every day. You can do a bigger journaling session on a Sunday if you want, looking back on your week. And I find this quite difficult, but because I'm a very future oriented person. I'm like, what's next, what's next? So but this has been life changing for me, because one thing I've learned from health and fitness, but also from building a business, is that there's always another goal. There's always more. It's always more, more, more. There is no destination. And you won't, if you're not happy now, you won't be happy when you reach your goal. So you have to, again, I'm such a cliche. The joy is in the journey. It is though. You have to, if you, like, a lot of people are thinking back to, like, an ideal version of themselves, when they got married or before they have kids or when they were 20 or whatever. And they're like, oh, I just want to be like I was back then. But what you need to do is think back to the version of yourself that, like, the habits that were in place then. It's not how you looked in that moment, in that photo, that has you feeling amazing. It's how you felt. And the thing is, if you're working towards a long-term goal, you can feel that way from day one as you put those habits in place. Like, I call that version of myself Queen Kate. What does Queen Kate do? She goes to bed at 9:30. She gets up she gets up nice and early in the morning, and gets herself organized for the day, and she gets out for a walk. She eats well, like that kind of stuff. And that queen version of yourself means you can feel like the way you want to feel, or that you think you're going to feel when you reach your goal. Why are you waiting for your goal to feel that way? And regularly, that journaling, bringing it back to, what am I proud of today? And then, once a week or once start of the month or whatever, really look back on your starting point. So if you're listening to this now, when was your starting point? Like, my starting point, I always see it as after I had my youngest child. He's 8 now. So I always look back to that as my starting point. And when I'm frustrated with myself for whatever reason, I think back to that version of myself, and I'd be like, my God, she'd be so proud.
Hmm.
And it's really empowering, and this really works. So doing that, always measure backwards. And and if you feel good about yourself and you feel empowered and you've got that evidence, you're like, I can do this. Okay, I'm going through a challenging stage. I'm at a little bit of a plateau. Shit's not that easy at the minute. Or I might even have gone backwards a little bit. Zoom out, bigger picture, and compare it to how far you have come. And even if you feel like you're back to square one, look back at the evidence that you can do this, because you have done it and you can do it again. You hear about these entrepreneurs over and over again that, they build a really successful business, they lose everything, and then they rebuild it all over again, more successful than the first time, because they take what they've learned. Same is true with health and fitness. Life does get in the way. We have setbacks, whether they're health setbacks, life, family, whatever. And like, life can be really tough at times, and we need to be easy on ourselves, and always remember that everything we've achieved so far, and we've survived everything we've come through so far, is evidence that we can do it.
And without that reflection piece, you just simply won't think that way or have those moments, because I
Exactly,
know.
because we're too busy. Like, we're too busy. We're always go, go, go. We're looking after everyone. We're thinking, oh God, I have to get to the gym. I'm working towards this goal. You have to create that space, but that space need only be 2 minutes before you get into bed.
Mhm.
Literally just, what am I proud of today? And it makes you stop and think. You might be sitting there for 5 minutes thinking, but it gets easier, and it retrains your brain. I promise you, you'll be happier, you will enjoy the journey, and you will make more progress by just putting that one little thing, what am I proud of today, in place.
And exactly what you said there about being too busy. Yes, it might pop up in the shower, or it might pop up on a long drive or in a walk, but then you're rushing to the next thing and you don't actually get to. You might think of it, oh, like, I've come this far, or, you know what, I've lost 7 kg or whatever it might be, but you don't get to actually feel it because you're not giving yourself that time to do so. And it's something I'm such an advocate of. It's in my daily check ins for all my clients every night. wins and challenges from the day. Because I do think it's important to note the challenges as well, because then obviously you can focus on how to work on those and note the wins. And not every client resonates with it, but I do see a huge correlation between my happiest clients, let's say, or my clients that are most positive about the process, and the ones that do actually recognize those wins. And like, I've got clients who, like, their wins are, they have their big wins every now and then, but they will find anything on a daily basis. And I love that, because their job is to see the smaller picture, the intricate little wins on the daily basis that I can't see. But our job is to see that bigger picture. And I don't do group coaching, I do one-to-one coaching. And I am always like that. I believe that's my role here, is to be their hype woman, find the bigger picture and those wins, and always zoom back out to the starting point, like you mentioned, and how far they've come, because we're not going to do it ourselves, but that daily reflection piece, I think, if you take anything from this podcast that you're listening to it now, something that I am such an advocate of, and you are as well, and I know it's probably in your coaching systems too, is reflect. You have to reflect. And as you said, it doesn't have to be 10 or 20 minutes, 2 minutes every night, make it a habit. And even if you don't write it down at the very start, because I do think it's a very positive thing to write it down, but even just forcing yourself to take that time of, how did today go? What could I have done better? And whether it be, how did today go, but how did this week go? How did this month go? I like to do, like, I've got a June reflection form that I'm going to send all my clients, that's like midway through the year, because I want them to take that time to reflect. Okay, do you know what? We're 6 months into the year. What has went well? Because we forget to do it ourselves. It's about getting someone to force yourself to do it till you get to a point where you realize the importance of it. But it's so easy, as you said. We're so busy. We're so busy. And
Yeah.
I genuinely think, if you take one thing from listening to this podcast as a listener, start reflecting, whether it be every day or every week. Just start taking that time, because it's so important for the success, as you said.
And if you can't find a win, then you have got to work on your mindset, because there is always a little win in every day, in every week. There is. It just means that you're on such a negative, what's the word? You're on like a negative streak at the minute, that you can't think. And the thing is, what we think is what we draw our attention to as well. So it can be very challenging at first, but there's always a win. Like, a win might be, if you look back and you're thinking back to your starting point of like how far you've come, it might be, I used to wake up in the middle of the night and eat mindlessly. I don't do that anymore.
Hmm.
So the person who's in that situation might think, yeah, but I still have 5 stone to lose. You've you've broken a subconscious habit that you've had for years, that has been sabotaging your health, that you don't do anymore. That's a massive win, and quite often they don't recognize it as a win. So that would be one example. The other one then is the walk. I now walk every day, and I used to not walk at all. And then that person could be like, oh yeah, but I still haven't really getting to the gym, or I'm only doing a 20-minute walk or whatever. They hadn't walked in years. That's massive. And I think, and you were talking about, layering the habits there. I kind of like to think of this analogy as well. Like, when you think about the comfort zone, and the comfort zone, you're not going to grow there. You're not going to, we all love to be in the comfort zone at times, and sometimes we need it. But if we want to make change, we need to step out of our comfort zone. We need to step out of our comfort zone into the growth zone, right? But what most people do when they start a diet or whatever, start a fitness plan, is they don't just like step out of their comfort zone. They change everything. They fling themselves out of the comfort zone so far that they jump off the cliff of overwhelm. And so then what happens, like, they change their whole lives, and I'm going to the gym 4 days a week, and I'm walking for 5 kilometers every single day, and I'm not eating chocolate, and I'm this, that, and the other. We've all been there. And they might, depending on how much willpower you have and how quiet your weeks are, you might manage it a few days, a few weeks, but you won't be able to keep it. It will start, something will happen, you will feel overwhelmed. And when you feel overwhelmed, you will revert straight back to the comfort zone. And this is why diets don't work. And this is why, like gimmicks, anything where you have to change everything doesn't work. It's about making small changes. So depending on where you are in your journey, if and I work with women with all different types of women. Some women who are in really, bad health, and genuinely getting out for a little 10-minute walk a day is huge progress for them. And then I've women who, are who are running half marathons but are coming and they need to build strength, and they're worried about their bone density, and we're focusing on strength training, and so everyone has different goals. But if I was to fire a 4 day or 5 day gym program at the woman who's running half marathons, that's not going to work. That's going to definitely overwhelm her, apart from it not being healthy to throw that much at someone who's training that much already. Likewise, if I get the person who is really beginning and dealing with a lot of health issues, that they have to do 3 workouts a week and walk 5 kilometers every day, and they have to track their calories exactly, that's too much for that person as well. So it's about doing it step by step. And in my coaching, we have this like continuum of a healthy lifestyle with the 10 healthy lifestyle habits. And my concept with this is there's no wagon that you're on or off. These 10 habits are your healthy lifestyle. And sometimes you'll be nailing a lot of them. Sometimes life will happen. You'll be on holidays, or it's just a busy month. There's someone in hospital. That life stuff happens. And when you start to feel overwhelmed, it means it's time to pull back on those habits. Be like, I can't. I'm trying to manage too much. And you look at the continuum, and you're like, what is doable? And then you focus on what is doable through that busy or difficult time, so that you're still giving you focus. And then when things get a little bit easier, you can add things back in. And same goes for that beginner. It might just be one habit they're putting in place until they're ready for the next. But you have to go, it's like progressive overload in the gym. It's like, you have to go by your feeling. When you start to feel pretty comfortable, it's time for the next habit to be introduced. And that reflection is so important, because you have to be able to check back in and be like, oh, yeah, no, I'm feeling pretty comfortable now. I probably could push on to the next thing, because obviously if you're feeling comfortable, you're going to stop making progress as well. So in order to continue making progress, you will, and people will develop at different stages as well. But I think that overwhelm piece is huge, and where a lot of people fall off the wagon. There is no wagon. There's just your healthy lifestyle. You're on it for life. Sometimes you're ticking more boxes, other times you're not. And like when I talk about those habits, like the 10 habits of a healthy lifestyle. Do you want me to go through them?
Yeah, why not? I mean, I probably could guess them, but go on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
off the top of my head now, I don't have it in front of me, but obviously we're talking about eating whole foods, like a daily walk, eating more protein, eating more vegetables, strength training, hydration, sleep, um, fiber is probably one of them as well. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Reflection and then journaling,
Yeah.
and tracking calories and macros. And I always put tracking the calories and macros last, because it won't always be the last move for everyone. There's a lot of people who are well able to do it. And I do believe that calorie counting plays a huge part in educating ourselves on what we're eating and how much and in what quantities, but it's not forever. And you're going to find it really hard to stick with your calorie deficit if you don't have the other bits in place. And they all
Mhm.
support each other. But then if you're on holidays, you might drop the counting calories because you're on holidays, but you might keep your daily walk and your water up, and your food quality would stay up. If you've got someone who's in hospital, and you're visiting them after work every day, you mightn't have time to go to the gym. So you're going to drop your strength training. You mightn't even have time to get a walk in, but you can track your calories. So you know what I mean? So sometimes it is just about being like, what can I actually fucking manage right now?
Hmm. Yeah, and I think it looks very different for different people because, like you mentioned with tracking calories there, for some people that is their element of like it adds mindfulness. It's not about restriction or whatever. It
Mm.
gives them that like, okay, even though I wasn't able to prioritize this, that, and the other today, I was still able to track, and they can see that actually the day didn't go as bad as they might think. And I don't use that
It
word bad.
rarely is as bad as they think. Yeah, rarely. And that's what I'd always get clients to when they've had a really bad day. I'm like, track it. Track it, because if we're sweeping it under the rug, you're living in denial. Track it without guilt. It's that curiosity instead of judgment.
And I'm so glad to hear you say that because sometimes I feel like such a pest for tracking, and obviously it does get such a negative. I don't know. I feel like it does have a negative, like there's a stigma around it. It's not always in a view to restriction. When it's like when someone's tracking always in a view to restrict and eat as little as possible, yes, that is negative. But more often than not, when a client is like, "Oh, I absolutely ruined Friday," so then I just like stop tracking, and I literally be like, "Please go back and track that." And now sometimes it can be quite triggering, and the right decision is to just draw a line and move on. But if that is regularly happening, tracking it is the best thing that you can do, because as you just said, it very rarely is as bad as you think. More often than
Yeah.
not, it actually, it didn't snowball like you thought it did. It didn't spiral like you thought it did. It's actually not that bad, and you've probably still ended up in a deficit over the course of a week. It was just one off day. But like you said, sweeping it under the rug, it just creates this little niggle in your head, and like this mental, it's this little mental niggle at them that I should have ticked that box and I didn't, or I let it get the better of me. Whereas actually, if you take control of it and if you track it in hindsight, it's never that bad. So I'm really glad to hear that that's your approach as well, because tracking calories needs to be we need to reframe it, because it has been so talked about so negatively and it's viewed so negatively when it's actually such a positive thing. But as you said, it's not forever. It is a short term tool, and short term looks different for everyone. Some people want to do it forever, and that's cool too. Like, I actually don't think there's a right or a wrong. But once you could confidently switch off from tracking and still eat the same, that's when I feel like you've mastered it. Like, I choose to track at times, but I could switch off it just the same, and I know I could still make great progress and live my life as normal. It's when it's done correctly, it's the most positive thing ever. And I dislike the negativity towards it sometimes. It's not for everyone, as you said. And obviously, if someone has a sinister negative relationship with food, I get it, but it can actually be such a positive thing. It changed my life. So it's nice to hear you say that as well.
Yeah, well, I think, we track our health markers, we track our blood pressure, we track we get our bloods done, we track all of these things. We track our resting heart rates, we track our steps, we track our finances.
Mhm.
Why is tracking what nutrients we're putting in our body considered negative? Like in relation to tracking calories, it being triggering and restrictive, the same can be said for exercise. Over exercising is also not good for you. And I'm a big advocate in balance. I love a bit of chocolate. I like to be able to go out to eat and have the dessert, but too much of that is also not going to be good. So extremes in either end is never good. Tracking, like you said, isn't forever. It's not for everyone. And it depends on the person's goal. But if you're someone who wants to lose a little bit of body fat to get into a healthy weight range, and your goal is health, but you also want to have a little bit of balance in your life, then tracking calories is the way to go, because you will be able to make sure that you can still have your chocolate or your popcorn or your crisps or your glass of wine, whatever it is that you enjoy, but also make sure that you're getting the nutrients that you need to be healthy. And if you can take that approach, it's really, really empowering. I don't track all the time anymore. Like you said, I don't need to. I go through phases of it. I think it's a really great skill to have, so that when you let things slip, I kind of have like a cycle. I feel like a yearly cycle now,
Mm.
that, like, starting in January, I usually track kind of January, February. After, Christmas has been a bit of a shit show, so I'll track, and I just to feel good, and just to make sure that, I'm, not taking the piss and I'm getting enough nutrients. And then I'll track. Then I kind of go easier as the spring goes on, but I definitely, in the summer, I don't track. And I go on holidays, and I, eating out all the time when I'm on holidays. Then when the kids go back to school in September, I tend to do a nice structured routine phase where I'll track again for a couple of months. And then sure, Christmas comes, and I enjoy every moment of Christmas. But that balance of, having times where I track, times where I don't track, there's no guilt, there's no control attached to it. It's just being able to live life. And when I do track, like I'm like, as I'm 40, I'm 5'6", but I've been training for so many years now that I've so much muscle on my frame that I can diet on 2,200 calories. So when I'm tracking, I'm not tracking restrictively. My calories nice and high. I'll start a little bit of a deficit on 2,200, and I'll never go lower than 2,000. And it tidies things up a little bit if I've been, a little bit too kind to myself for a few weeks. And there's never any extremes. I'm never not fitting into clothes. I'm never going into different stone brackets on the scales. It all just stays fairly balanced. But it's more just about I find the tracking, it's not about losing weight, because my weight stays fairly stable all year round. It's about macronutrient balance for me. It's about Okay, Kate, have you been eating enough protein? Have you been getting enough fiber? That kind of stuff. Are you eating healthy fats? Oh wait, you've forgotten to eat healthy fats lately because you've been eating out all the time, or things like that.
Hmm. And it's actually really interesting to hear that that's the times that you use it, because just to give the listeners some insight, like I'm actually quite the opposite of you. I wouldn't tend to use it in, let's say, January or February, because they'd be my quite quiet, let's say. Obviously, it depends. I don't have the same school routine year that you
Yeah,
would have with kids, let's say. For me as well, I'm still like getting down the kgs. I still feel like I'm carrying excess body fat for the sports that I'm trying to do, for running and stuff. So I do dip into it at different fat loss phases, but I tend to use it more on holidays or like when I go home for the summer and stuff, because I'm conscious that I know in my routine that I'm eating the foods that I should be. But when I go back to Ireland for a couple of weeks or months, or when I'm on holidays and such, I'm not tracking restrictively, but I want to make sure that I am getting enough protein, because it's actually quite easy to for little things like that to slip if you're not super mindful of it. So I'll be more conscious to actually track in those times. And that's an
yeah,
example of where there's no right or wrong. It just depends
exactly.
why
Yeah,
you need it and how it fits into your life and how it adds to your life as opposed to like takes from it. So yeah, really interesting to hear like the different approaches there. But something you mentioned there about strength training, and I'm conscious of our time, but I love, like, it's actually amazing to hear you say that you're 5'6" and your diet calories are 2,200, because I'm 6 foot. I started losing weight on 2,400, and finished losing weight, like the bulk of my 15 to 20 kg weight loss. I finished that on like 2,100. And it always, when I first start clients off on like 1,900, 2,000, anywhere in those brackets, they're like, that's a lot of calories. Can we lower calories? And I mean, it's every time, I get it every time. And I
Oh, Rebecca,
totally.
don't talk to me. Every time. It's the one pushback we get when clients start. Yeah,
Mhm.
every time.
And it's brilliant when a client trusts you and does it, and they see that they lose weight, because we've so much wiggle room there as well. But the reason that you're currently able to diet on that amount of calories is because of the strength training. And that's something that I just wanted to touch on, because you're obviously, you're such an advocate of strength training. You've been doing it for so many years that that's a huge reason to start strength training. Is think of the fact that the more that you strength train, the more muscle that you have, the more that you can get away with eating and enjoy those holidays and not have to think about constantly looking for the low calorie, high protein option. There are just so many reasons to strength train, that being one of them. I'd love to hear more about how you fell in love with strength training, the benefits of it for you, and why you encourage your clients to do it.
Yeah, I think with strength training, just in relation to what you're saying with like the deficit. So I work with a lot of women over the age of 45 even, so a lot of perimenopausal women, and I work with a lot of women in their 50s and 60s as well. And what happens as we get older is we're losing muscle mass. And as we're losing muscle mass, we're not just getting, there's this narrative that we're just becoming these smaller, frailer versions of ourselves, but we're not. What's happening is we're losing muscle mass, our metabolisms are slowing down, and the muscle that we had on our frame when we were younger is being replaced by body fat. So that's what middle age spread is. So we're replacing that muscle with body fat. And then when we have women that come in their mid 40s to into their mid 60s looking to lose weight, in order to go, especially if they're not massively overweight, but their body composition has changed and they think they need to go into a calorie deficit, that deficit has to be really low. We're talking 15, 1600 calories, but it's not actually what they need. And what they need is to start lifting weights because, and the thing is, as you build muscle, if you're a beginner, you can, be in a very slight calorie deficit and you can build muscle at the same time. Obviously, over time, your body will get used to it. In order to build muscle, you need to be eating enough. And I think the best protocol for any woman, any perimenopausal woman into menopause, and I know it might be a little bit out of your list or ranges just because it's a lot of women that I work with, but this is very relevant for any woman,
Yeah, yeah.
um, is if you only have a few pounds that really you want to lose, it's different if you're in an unhealthy weight range that you're concerned and you want for your health and you want to bring your weight down. Every woman should be strength training regardless.
Mhm.
But if you've only a few pounds to lose, you're trying to be toned, small, whatever, you need to eat at maintenance and you need to lift weights. Because what happened to me when I say I can diet on 2,200 calories, I'm not very good at dieting. I lost the weight that I needed to lose. But since I got myself to a healthy weight range, I've never been able to push myself to get like super lean because I just don't want to. I like food too much. I like to feel strong. I like to feel like I've got energy and I feel healthy. So what happened was I've been training for years and accidentally building muscle really because I haven't been intentionally. I don't do this bodybuilder building phase, cut phase, which, can have a place in certain people's lives depending on their relationship with food. But I just kind of loved the gym and I loved how it made me feel. And I went because for reasons of feeling strong, enjoying it, celebrating my body, giving it what it needed for health reasons as well. And then all of a sudden, then when it was a case that I was like, oh, do you know what? I want to lose a few pounds. So there was so much muscle under there because I'd been eating well, and my nutrition focus was always health and fueling. And I actually saw a clip from I love Dr. Stacey Sims, she's my favorite. Um, but she was talking on someone else's podcast, but they were saying if you train like an athlete and you eat like an athlete and you stop focusing on weight loss, what do you think is going to happen? You're going to look like an athlete eventually. So,
Mhm.
we need to just be eating the right foods. We'll be amazed at how amazing we feel. I know that hasn't really answered your question, but that's my thoughts on strength training. Do it because it makes you feel strong. Do it because, like, what happened to me when I was started lifting weights, I never knew I could lift. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. What else can I do? Because when I was growing up and I was younger, my self confidence wasn't really strong. And I did kind of think I'm weaker than most people. And it was a belief I had, again, that just because you think something doesn't mean it's true. But I think, if we've got limiting beliefs, the only way out of them is to build evidence. And the best way to build evidence is to go and do something. And one of the things that you can do that's going to be the best for your health and your confidence and your mental health is lift weights. Um, and you'd be surprised at how it'll spill. And it's not just me now that, strength training has led to career changes and all sorts. I have clients who've, gone for promotions they would never have dreamt of going for and made career changes and, managed to be able to get pregnant after a long time and not being, of trying and not being able to, it really does spill into every area of your life. And, it's the one thing I very much believe there's no one size fits all, but every woman should be lifting weights.
Mhm. Yeah, and all what you listed there are many reasons to start and many reasons to continue. And I think as it is with anyone, everyone's why is so different. But you just listed a multitude of things there, like because of how it makes you feel, because what it can bring into your life, also how much that you can eat and not have to think so much about it, how you look then as a result of it too. And what you mentioned there about like there is this idea of, oh, it's just harder to lose weight as I'm older and, I'm in my 30s now or my 40s now and I just can't lose the weight like I used to, or I used to be able to just cut out. I regularly hear this from clients, they might say, I used to just be able to cut out chocolate and, I'd go out for an hour walk every day and I'd lose the weight. It's not like that anymore, not because things just magically slow down. It's because after the age of 30, we start, actually, even before, obviously, that depends, it's personal as well, but they generally say the age of 30, we start to lose that muscle mass unless we challenge it with resistance training. And then that's what keeps everything going. And it's never too late to start. Like, I'm grateful that I started at around 25, but I think as well, it doesn't have to be in the gym with weights. I think that's a huge stigma too. Obviously, that's the end goal because you're limited in what you can do at home. But you doing push ups off the floor, as you mentioned earlier on in the podcast, that's resistance training. And there are a lot of at home workouts that are really, really, really effective. So I think if you take two things from this podcast, it's to reflect and to resistance train, right?
Reflect and lift weights.
Yeah, literally. Like, that
Yeah,
keep calm, and it's just like keep calm, reflect, and lift weights. We need to make one of
yeah,
those because
yeah. There's the
honestly,
slogan now.
and I know a lot of what we're saying now, because I know you've lost a substantial amount of weight yourself, and I'm always thinking back to how 17 and a half stone Rebecca used to think, and I would be listening to this conversation now, and I'd be thinking, yeah, but I just want to lose fat. I just want to lose fat. Like that's all that was on my mind is I just want to lose fat. Like I thought, oh, that doesn't matter. I'll lose the fat first and then I'll worry about reflecting, or I'll lose the fat first and then I'll worry about resistance training. And I didn't realize how intertwined they were. I didn't realize that, like, in order to lose the fat, you have to work in your relationship with food. In order to lose the fat, you have to do those reflections or create that space for that. Like, I didn't necessarily have an app or a coach, but I had my sister and she got daily voice messages from me about fat loss. So like that was my reflection piece there. And that's what I like to be for my coaches as well, is like whether they're sitting down and journaling, even if they're brain dumping to me, that's the reflection piece. And in order to lose the fat, you have to do all these things that we're talking about. You have to change your mind frame from you get to exercise rather than you have to. You have to have that daily reflection piece or a regular reflection piece and focus on the positives and the wins. You have to open your mind up to the fact that resistance training is something that every female needs to do. And as you said, if you train like an athlete, eat like an athlete, you're going to end up looking like one. You have to work in your relationship with food. And then all of that will cause you to lose fat as a result of it. No one in the history of the world will have ever lost fat, one, without a calorie deficit, but without improving all of those things. No, I should correct myself there. They might have lost the fat, but they won't keep it off if they don't improve all of those things. And that's the key.
There's no quick way to it. There's a quick way. You won't be able to keep it. And anyone listening has probably tried a lot of quick ways. And, if you're like, diets don't work and, oh, I can't do it. It's probably because first of all, you're rushing it. You're trying to be too extreme. It's not realistic. And just because something takes a bit of time doesn't mean it's not working. And last point I want to make, actually, because I just think this is such an important point, particularly after the age of 30, even more so after the age of 40. Stop fixating on the scales as your measurement of progress. And I know we could do a whole I could do a whole podcast on this anyway. And I see it time and time again, particularly as your hormones start to change. You can be losing. I have one of my clients, and I talk about her all the time because I just find it fascinating. This was last summer. I think she was talking from June till August, right? She lost, what did she say she lost now? I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Oh yeah, she lost 4 pounds, right, from June till August. Okay, so she was like, I've only lost 4 pounds, which is great. 4 pounds is great.
Mm-hmm.
But she dropped from a size 16 down to a size 12, and it was only 4 pounds on the scales. So please, it's not something we're saying to make you feel better. Stop being so fixated on scales. Fair enough, use it, but you have to do photos. You have to do, you can do measurements if you want to, like centimeters don't really do it for me. You have to do the photos. And you need to get a pair of jeans, nice stiff ones that are really unforgiving, and you need to use them as a form of measure as well, because the jeans don't lie. And if those jeans are now fitting you or they're loose on you, regardless of what the scale says, you are losing body fat. And those photos side by side, even if you can't see it, your coach will be able to show it to you and be like, look. And because we can be losing body fat, building muscle, but what's happening hormonally for a lot of us women, particularly over the age of 40, is we're holding on to a lot of water and a lot of inflammation in the body. And a lot of it is to do with hormonal changes. And this is why women give up. And it breaks my heart. It's one thing that sometimes makes me want to just quit being a coach, because I get so sad. I get so sad that people give up on themselves because they're so fixated on a number on the scales. And it's so hard to get that truth through to people. But I just beg of you to please take those photos, use those jeans, trust the process.
Mm-hmm. I am like a fiend for measurements. I don't necessarily do photos, but it's so nice
See,
to hear you.
everyone's different, isn't it? It's funny.
Yeah,
Like, whereas for me, I'm like, oh, a centimeter. Oh, it doesn't do
yeah,
anything
no,
for
I
me.
love that.
Yeah.
And you just gave your example there of the client changing from a 16 to a 12, but down only 4 pounds only. You know what I mean? Like, obviously, I know she would have
Yeah, but
thought.
over the space of a summer, like we're talking about over the summer.
Yeah. I have a client and I just put up a post about this last week, but now I've a couple of clients who are like this, and I'm so glad. I'm just thinking of them listening to this part, and I'm like, girls, like, this is real. It's not just me trying to be like, oh no, the drop will come, and like just telling you what you want to hear, as you say. The scales is just so unpredictable. Everyone's different, but this client in particular, technically her scales is up from when we started last November, but she's down 35 centimeters all over. 35
Amazing.
centimeters. Like there's like 10 centimeters on her waist, 10 centimeters on her hips or on her stomach, 5 centimeters on her hips. Like I obviously don't remember them exactly, but huge amounts all over. But the scales is technically up. and she looks vastly different. Like she's fitting into different clothes and everything like that. And yes, I mean, as you said, we could do a whole podcast on the scales. And as you also said, it does break my heart. It's the one part of coaching that I'm like, I don't know if I can ever. There are certain clients that I'm like, I'm not sure if I will ever get that attachment from the scales away, but I'm going to try my very, very, very best. So I suppose it's better off that we didn't touch on this earlier on in the podcast, because we would have probably went off
It would
on
take
one,
over. Yeah, yeah.
literally. So we keep it positive. But yeah, I'm glad that you said all of what you said there, because my clients can hear it from someone else now as well.
It's not something we're saying, be like, I swear, fingers crossed, it's going to work. It's like we know, like, trust us, trust the process. And really, like, when do you ever walk around and be like, oh, Jesus, Mary looks great. She must be about 11 stone. Oh, look, Fanula there must be about 10 and a half. You're never putting numbers on people. So, like, what does it matter what you weigh? It's about your body composition. It's about your health.
Hmm.
One of my favorite measures of progress is a resting heart rate. Watch that come down as you lose
Yeah,
weight, as you get fitter and stronger.
I love touching on that with clients, because it's not one that people tend to focus on, but when you draw it to their attention, I feel
It's
like
such a
it can.
measure of health.
Yes, it's huge.
Yeah.
I love that. And as you just mentioned there, but like you're not looking at people saying like, oh, we're looking at people and seeing, do they look well? I feel like with the scales, it can be slightly deeper in terms of if you're in a deficit, and if you're making all these efforts and hitting your steps and you're ticking the boxes, seeing the scales come down, it's like if you're, investing or working on a business or saving money. Obviously, it gives you that numerical reassurance that it's all working away in the background. So I don't mind using it as one of the metrics, but we need
Yeah.
to have a million other metrics there as well. And like that, measurements, clothes, photos, compliments, jeans, as you said. I
Yeah.
always get my clients to choose one or two like key items of clothing and try them on regularly and let that be their thing.
Yeah.
But yes,
Absolutely.
we will use the scales, but we need many other metrics as well. So
Yeah.
yeah, resting heart rate is one I want to probably push a little bit more, because it is huge, and you don't need to be running for that to come down. Like for me, just losing weight, my resting heart rate came down because my body was under less stress. So it is a huge indication of better health. So yeah.
Definitely.
Have you anything else you want to? I don't want to just cut you off there, but would
No,
you
I think, yeah, I'm happy now what we finished on here.
like?
Um, the main thing is, it is about, at the end of the day, it's about how you feel. It really is. And if you're forcing yourself into a lifestyle that you hate to look a certain way, and don't get me wrong, looking your best can make you feel your best, but not if it comes at the cost of your health and your happiness. So back to the start, we can have it all. Um, but the focus really does need to be on the habits, on the health, and on the feeling good. And the physical side comes too. And it's like the cherry on top.
Hmm. And it will always follow. Like you focus on all of that, and the rest follows, and then it will stick as well. Because there are so many ways to lose weight. There are so many ways to lose weight. There's only one way to keep it off, and that is to fix
Yeah.
your relationship with food and play the long game. So, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm delighted with that conversation, because it's exactly why I wanted you on. Like we've the exact same approach, exact same ethos, and I think if you and I just keep hammering home these harsh truths and the realities and the reality of fat loss and health, then the more ears that we can get out to, the better.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me on. I've loved it. It's been
Yeah.
great.